The wind blew through the decrepit old shed and sent shivers down the boiler of the wearied-eyed engine. His glamorous red paint was a far cry from what it once was. It was shabby and faded now. The thin layer of dust and soot coated his dome. "It's a chilly one today," Percy exclaimed, as he backed down between the others. "And our first snowfall is upon us." James rolled his eyes. "Just what he needed." Daisy shot him a dirty look. "I assume it looks rather lovely outside." "Oh, indeed. Wind can get a bit nippy, but other than that, it's a winter wonderland." "Yeah, and what happens when it piles up, James asked bluntly.
"Well, we could just use our snowplows, or maybe—"
"Pah! You'd think we'd be able to clear piles of snow? You're not strong enough. I could keep a grip, and Mrs. Prim and Proper over here wouldn't dare do such work," James bluntly interrupted.
"Oh, grow up, James. You know what I've put that behind me."
"Whatever you say."
"What about him?"
Percy asked, eyeing the far corner of the roundhouse. All eyes fell on the engine, who sat facing the wall, as quiet as a mouse. He stared off at a picture on the wall, with the happy faces of those long lost staring right back. His blue paintwork had slowly begun to chip away, leaving spots of rusty black undercoat, similar to what the engine wore when he first arrived on the railway.
"Oh, Percy, dear, let's leave him be. I don't think he's quite ready to work again."
Daisy frowned. James just sniffed. "Well, he's certainly filled with the Christmas spirit." Daisy glared at James with such disgust she thought she blew a fuse. "What?" James said innocently. "I'm not wrong. None of us are in our best condition. How can you really expect us to clear those tracks?" Daisy looked like she was about to snap back, but she composed herself and letting her radiator cool before she opened her mouth again.
"You know, James, having a little hope wouldn't hurt. It's almost Christmas," she said softly.
"Pah!" James laughed. "Don't be silly, Daisy. You still really believe those make-believe terms? Christmas magic isn't going to get rid of the apocalypse, and it certainly won't save any of us." While the two continued to counteract each other, suddenly the sound of an engine began, followed by a cough and a splutter. Percy looked over and saw the small tractor making his way toward the exit of the shed.
"Terence, where are you going?"
"That snow isn't going to get cleared with all this chatting. I'm going out there," he said determinedly.
"Terence, no, you can't. Your engine still needs repairs,"
Percy pleaded. This finally caught the attention of the red engine in the railcar.
"Oh, Terence, no. You can't go out in the weather like this," Daisy shrieked. "Please, I'll just go out. I don't mind."
Terence just sighed. "No, Daisy, let me do this. James is right. We don't have much motive power as it is, and you all need to be in the best condition. It doesn't matter what happens to me, but you are all needed."
"Terence, don't say that. You're just as important as any of us," Percy cried. Tears were beginning to fall down his face.
Terence just smiled. "Come on now, Percy. It isn't a nice day to cry now, isn't it? Have you forgotten that my caterpillar tracks can take me anywhere? I'll be fine. And who knows? I might find somebody out there. 'Tis the season for giving after all, right?" Percy sparked up just a bit. However, both James and Daisy knew Terence was putting on a brave face. As the tractor headed to the outside into the darkness, both he and the engines wondered if he would make it back. It had been a while since Terence had gone out into the snow. The engines were starting to get worried. They couldn't worry for long, however, as the shed door opened, and in came a woman wearing a very familiar attire. This is Amelia Hatt, the daughter of Richard Hatt, and to the engines, is the current controller of the railway. At least what's left of it.
Hello, ma'am. Is something the matter?
Daisy said worriedly.
I'm afraid so, Daisy.
She began, fixing the placement of the top hat on her hair, trying to imitate her father.
The people out in the towns are in desperate need of coal. Please tell me we at least have the stack we got at the mines the last time we went there. Oh, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I shunted them out in the warehouse last week.
Percy peeped.
Good engine,
she smiled. She then turned her attention to James.
Now, James...
But before she could continue, James was already snapping back. Are you kidding me? You want me to go out there at a time like this? He shouted.
James!
Shouted Daisy. However, Amelia held her hand up, and the rail car fell silent. Amelia was all too familiar with James's bold personality. She had learned from her father all about his engines, so she kept her composure.
James, those people need that coal, and you're the only engine here capable of taking a huge load like that.
That's not true. Why not have Donald do it? Or the Diesel. He's already in the warehouse where the trucks already are. She sighed.
James,
you know Donald's condition isn't as good as yours, both physically and mentally. And we only use the Diesel in case of emergency. This is an emergency, isn't it? So there he should go out. Now Amelia was cross. She folded her arms and looked at James stern. James gulped. He knew that look all too well. Every Topham, no matter from what era, always had the same stern face. He also knew exactly what she was going to say next. Really useful engines do as they are told, James, she said, almost monotonously. The red engine sighed. He had looked at his two colleagues. Daisy was glaring at him already, knowing that he would say yes or face her wrath. He then looked at Percy, who didn't look angry at him. Just sad, and almost disappointed. James's boiler went cold. Angry stares were bad enough, but seeing Percy's downcast eyes finally made him reconsider his thoughts. If people out there really needed him, he would not do nothing to stop until they were helped. All right, I'll do it, he said weakly.
That's a good engine, Amelia smiled. Now, some people have volunteered to help, she paused. Is something the matter, Miss Amelia?
Daisy looked concerned.
I just realized most of our coach stock need maintenance done on them. It'll take forever to get them checked out. I'm not sure if we have any other... I'll do it, someone interrupted.
Everyone looked behind Percy to see that the voice belonged to Henrietta.
Henrietta? Are you sure?
Percy asked.
I'm the finest coach in this shed, and I've been meaning to stench my wheels for a while now. Besides, someone has to keep James company, she said sweetly.
James just rolled his eyes in amusement.
Oh, all right, then. I'll just go get everything ready now, Amelia said blankly, before walking away.
I'm still not sure about her, James whispered.
Oh, come on, James, she's trying her best,
Daisy frowned sympathetically.
It must be hard trying to run what's left of the railway during a crisis like this. I think she's nice, Percy spoke up. I'm sure the others will be proud of her.
Amelia had overheard the engine's opinions. Her face fell. She knew James was right. Not a word was able to get James to take the train until he saw Percy's face. And she wasn't even able to remember the amount of rolling stock or what needed maintenance. It felt more like the engines were the ones controlling her. James winced as the frigid flakes of snow hit his face. He thought his warm boiler would make quick work of the snow, but there was far too much. It grew thicker and heavier as he pushed forward, further down the main line. Come on! Come on! He puffed. Nearly there! He had hit Crosby, Wellsworth, Merrin, Cronk, and now he was nearing that place. James shivered at the thought of what could be awaiting. You sure we can't skip a stop? Absolutely not, shouted the driver. Not everyone up there are monsters. The outline of a large castle-like station broke through the snow, and James couldn't have been more happy and worried. Killdane had much more literal meaning now, but this had to be done. Henrietta could sense James's hesitation and confided in the Red Engine.
Don't be afraid, James. Just stand your ground and they'll let you through.
James took a deep breath and steadied his gaze. Right. The driver opened the regulator, and James inched into the station. As he did, he noticed a faint commotion from the nearby sidings. Mixed with the howling wind were voices. They were disgruntled groans, with a hearty mix of profanities. As James narrowed his eyes and smiled. Well, bless my soot! There was Terence, trying to derail one of the Iron Twins. Based on the lack of insults, James knew right off the bat it was Bert. He was always the more refrained of the two, just kept quiet and to himself. That's what always made him so menacing. But now, it was more so sympathetic. I knew some snow and wind wouldn't put you down, James exclaimed. Terence blinked at James's sincerity, but smiled nonetheless. Maybe there was some good still left in him, he thought. Mind giving me a hand with this? My tracks can only do so much. James eyed the gronk and noticed the line of trucks behind him. They were filled with wood, fabrics, and even some coal. If anything, him being off the line is doing us a favor. Bert just looked down at his buffers. He should have been expecting that, seeing what he had been forced to do all this time. He hated it, but he didn't have a choice. Terence grew stern. We leave him here, and he'll freeze. You know what they're like. They just take him to bits. Bert's eyes grew wide. James could sense the pure terror coursing through his frames. James sighed. All right. 'Tis the season for giving after all, right? After some work, Bert's wheels finally rested on the rails once more. He smiled contentedly, as if to say thanks, before giving a honk and pulling away. See, that wasn't so bad, began Terence, before he was cut off by a splutter, a groan, and the seizing of an engine. A grimy driver threw open Bert's cab door and opened the engine hatch before being coated in a dark oily smoke. Blast this wretched snow! Your engine can't bloody breathe! James looked at Terence and was greeted with the exact face he was expecting. I really don't think I can go through with that one, he said. Come on now, James, Henrietta exclaimed. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Oh yeah, Henrietta, trust me, I'm sure that he would, but I'm sure that they would appreciate an easy picking of scrap iron. If you leave him here, then we're just as bad as they are. Surely Topham would want you to do what's right. James thought for a moment and sighed. She was right. Topham, all of them, expecting nothing but the best from their engines. James rolled in front and buffered to Bert before setting off down the desolate branch line. The trek was mostly silent. Then again, when your only company's mute, how much communication could James have been expecting? You know, James began, you could ditch those psychos. I'm sure Percy would be happy to have you around. He's lost so much, you know. Bert gave a disgruntled sigh before looking at his buffers and then to his side. I get it. You've got family up there. It's hard finding something hopeful nowadays. I wonder how Percy, Terence, or even Daisy does it. They can be a pain sometimes, especially the latter. But they're all I got left. My family. Bert gave a forced smile. His brother was a reason, yes, but not the main one. It's the idea of him coming to find them. The branch line was a treacherous journey, due to the mountainous terrain. The wind and snow certainly didn't help. James used what little sand he had left sparingly. He now regretted pouring so much on Gordon's Hill. As they passed the lakeside station, James tried to keep his attention off the lake. He knew who was there. His eyes just couldn't resist, and glanced toward the lake numerous times. They were quick enough to see the wreckage. 5 or 6 coaches lay high in the embankment, some partially submerged in the icy water. James thought for a moment. He could make out the shape of an engine at the head before snapping his view back into the line ahead. Bert cleared his throat and gave a slight hum, almost as if to say, "I'm sorry for your loss." James didn't reply, and just kept moving. Before long, James rolled into the top station at Killdane, and just beyond lay the Ironworks, a place that has been known to strike fear in any engine on the island. Even the frosty charm of snow was overpowered by the hellish red glow the place emitted. James grew to a near snail's pace as his eyes grew wide. For the first time in a long time, he was genuinely terrified. The silence of the wind was cut by a deep, foreboding horn. "Who are you?" echoed a gruff voice. James came to a halt and shivered. What he didn't realize was that it wasn't him who was shaking. He peered through the snow and saw the outline of the other engine. It was staring right at him. There was a hum. Hinges and gears turned, and something rose above the beast. Its wheels began to turn, and old metal frames groaned. James began to panic before anything could happen. "Stop!" James's jaw hung low, as for the first time ever, at least to his knowledge, Bert had spoken. "This engine is not for you." A loud groan followed this, near identical to one of the infected. Its appendage lowered and backed away into the snow and blurred out of sight. James was swiftly uncoupled and looped onto the other line, pulling alongside Bert. "Thanks for the save." Bert gave a content smile and sighed. "Back to being mute? Guess we can only have so many Christmas miracles at once, eh?" Not wanting to test his luck any further, James hurried away back towards the main line to meet with Henrietta and Terence. Maybe there is some good after all, he thought. James returned to Tidmouth and was greeted by heavy fanfare. People cheered as he rolled in. Percy and Daisy were ecstatic to see him, along with Terence and Henrietta. To James's surprise, another face had shown up to the sheds.
"Since the mines have closed due to the winter, I reckon I come down here to give you some company before Christmas." Mavis grinned.
James just laughed, but he was happy to see everyone in good spirits, especially Percy. The rest of the night was spent with people and engines chatting among themselves, preparing for the holiday festivities.
"It's proud of you, I am," Amelia gleamed when she spoke to James. "And I'm sure Father would be proud of you too," she continued.
James smiled, albeit not as enthusiastic as the controller hoped. Amelia felt like she needed to say more, but she really didn't know what else to say. The comments from early on were still plaguing her mind, and she really didn't know how to properly speak to the engines in the same vein as her father. She muttered a little goodbye and made her way back towards the guest, leaving James just as doubtful about her as before. Amidst all the conversation, James looked over to Daisy. "You were right. I suppose there are some Christmas miracles left in the world," he stuttered. James expected a smug reply back, but instead, the railcar gave a knowing smile and turned her attention back to the crowd. James turned his gaze outside as the winter snow continued to fall on the island. He thought to himself how he didn't encounter a single infected in his entire run. Maybe the cold had killed them off? Then again, the virus was known to adapt, and many winters had already passed before, and yet they still lingered. So where did they go? He soon snapped himself out of his trance. Now wasn't the time to think about that. He was at the party. He should let himself enjoy the little joy that was left in the world. Because the thing about miracles is that they only happen once. But what happens next will have to wait, as I shan't spoil the next story.
He's making a list and checking it twice. Gonna find out who's naughty and nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. Oh, you better watch out, you better not cry.